it's Halloween and nobody cares. Hey, sore throat, and tomorrow I'm gonna have my Chinese test, so I'm actually dead. What's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite albums, and today I'm gonna do a mini albums review where I talk about 2011 albums that came out that year, great albums, and also bad albums. I'm gonna start off by talking about 4 albums that I like, and then the 2 shitty albums. But before that, I would also like to mention 3 albums that I really want to talk about, but just don't have time to talk about because, look at me. Do I look like I have enough time? The first one I have to talk about is the James Blake self-titled, because the production on that album is crispy clear. It's very crystal clear, and James Blake's songwriting and melodies on this album is so gentle and soft and tender. It's a wonderful album indeed. We also have the album Aesthetica by Liturgy, which I've just listened for like a little bit, like once only, so I need more listens. But so far, I think it's a really amazing, solid, but also at the same time raw and violent black metal-esque album. And another album that I would like to mention is the Subtract album, which is this dubstep dance electronic album with some really catchy songs on there, like a Wildfire featuring Little Dragon, or one of my favorites, Pharaohs featuring Rose Garber or something. Rose featuring Rose. Yeah, the production also very crispy, clean, and clear. And also that guy features Sampha like on 6 of the tracks on the album for some reason. But yeah, Sampha gives an amazing performances in the album as well. And that's pretty much it for these 3 albums. Okay, we'll start off with PJHarvey with Let England Shake. So PJHarvey is a rock singer-songwriter from England. Obviously, I mean, look at the album title here, and this album is called Let England Shake, and boy, it's a pretty great album. Of course, the lyrics on this album, they mostly deal with England, and man, this is one of the most English albums I've ever heard. It's the formality and the cold, the deadpan humor, the sarcasm, the in-your-face lyrical style. It's so English. And this album also deals a lot with politics, death, war, corruption. Right off the bat, we have the title track with the jangly guitars and the very flavorful instrumentations. The vocals, they are, throughout the entire album, the vocals are very flimsy and high-pitched, and in a good way. It's very unique. But back to the title track, I really love the busy, jangly guitars. I think they're xylophones, either xylophones or glockenspiel, but they're really well incorporated on the track, and I really love the lyrics about how the dancing days of England are over. And then we have the second track, The Last Living Rose, which starts off as a pretty nice, low-key, shimmery ballad with some buffy drums. But afterwards, the track sort of progresses and starts to be like better and better every single second, especially towards the end where we get this horn line, and the horns being played are so dead inside. It's actually kind of good because it just makes the track kind of having a depressive undertone, if you know what I mean. The third track is The Glorious Land, and it's also fantastic. I love the watery guitars, the primal drums, the horn samples suddenly slapped in the verses actually feels kinda organic and kinda creative. And I love the very catchy but also flowery vocals. That's very angelic, and the vocal harmonies towards the end with the little key change is brilliant as well. The fourth track, The Words That Maketh Murder, is personally my favorite on the album. The hook and the verses, they are just golden. The core progression on this track manages to be tedious and goofy, but also catchy and sharp and exciting all at the same time. Very flavorful as well. And there's another key change in the chorus that's very brilliant, that just adds onto the drama and the weight that this track carries. Here are the words that maketh murder. Afterwards, we have the track All and Everyone, and it is one of the quieter moments on the album with the dreary guitars, the sad and emotional, but also passionate performances. The ending is but I still like the track. I just don't like the ending all that much because it just gets quieter and it just slows down. But the next track, On Battleship Hill, is fantastic as well, with the nice watery guitars. Again, the cymbal hits are actually very gentle, very crispy, clear as well. And at first, it's a very sincere folk song, but it sort of melts, rather builds into this sad rock song, folk rock song that's very compelling and engaging. The track England is fantastic. It has some really beautiful falsettos that just escalates throughout the track. And the performances, they're angelic, they're sincere, and at the end we even get a sampled Kurdish song, which is really nice. We have the track In the Dark Places, also an amazing track. The hook is very downtrodden, and the bass is very dejected, but together they still form this really solid, compelling track. Bitter Branches, also a pretty good song, with some focused raw guitars, banging drums, and vocals that sounds like angry chants. But again, the formality of England and Britain in general, and Ireland, I guess, the formality, it's there. I can feel it. Afterwards, we have Hanging in the Wire, which is not one of the best songs on the album. The pianos are rather slow and uneventful. The vocals are a little whispery, and together they feel a little aimless, a little directionless. But still, the next track, also not that great, though. It's called Written on the Forehead, and while I like the summery jam guitars, they just feel a little stiff, a little rigid, and the vocals with the watery sound effects, I'm not a huge fan of, you know. But the ending certainly saves the album with the very nice, nostalgic vocals in the beginning, with a male singer this time, but then afterwards we get some vocal harmonies which are really blissful and satisfying and gratifying, and with some sunset guitars, which I really like. And yeah, overall, this album is fantastic. Not many flaws, not many complaints. I love a majority of the songs here. It is a 9 out of 10 for me. My favorite track here is The Words That Maketh Murder. Least favorite, Hanging on the Wire. This is easily one of the best mini albums review videos I've ever done, because every single album is pretty, good to talk about. It makes me feel good to talk about these albums because they're worth discussing, because the next album is an interesting one. It is ShabazzPalaces with Black Up. Experimental hip-hop project, ShabazzPalaces. This album, I didn't like it at first. I thought it's really weird because it's very experimental. It's almost like clipping, but without the catchy hooks and the flows. It's so disjointed, so chopped up, and so vague and sparse. It's hard to digest, but after like 3 or 4 listens, it begins to grow on me, and now it's one of the better rap albums of the decade. I really like it now. The album starts off with Free Press and Curl. The bass is kind of scratchy, pulsative, repetitive in a good way, with the sputtering, scratchy cymbals as well. And we also get some slowed down vocals during the choruses, which are just kind of eerie, adds onto the effect. The production on the album is probably my main reason for liking the album, but the very weird but also memorable and sticky production, plus the very charismatic and playful performances together, they really have a lot of chemistry. Anyway, I like the first track. The second track is a little bit of a low point, but I still like it nonetheless. It's called An Echo from the Hosts That Profess, Infinitum. And we get these very aggressively stretched female vocals as the beat, and you can actually hear these digital stretch marks, which actually adds onto the abrasive sound and tone of the track really well. Also, we get some eerie xylophones towards the end that just adds onto the personality. We have Are You, Can You, Were You, Felt. And this track is way more accessible. We get some drony strings as a bit of sounds. We get some stuttery, jazzy pianos that are super chill and laid back. Some really nice, again, chill, relaxed performances. Very vibey, very wavy. And we have the rapper repeating, "It's a feeling," because this track, it's a feeling. And then afterwards, we have the track titled A Treatease, dedicated to the Avian Airess from North East Nubis, parenthesis, 1,000 questions, 1 answer, close parenthesis. A very long song title. The song itself is pretty cutesy with the wiggly, jiggly keyboards, clicky, clacky beat. That kind of reminds me of some of the production off of Gorillaz, Plastic Beach, a little bit. But the next track, Youlogy, is what really hooked me in. The first song that clicked for me, because it is such a banger. The first half is so cacophonous, so noisy, and the flow on top is so smooth. He just glides on top of the beat very smoothly. And then afterwards, we get some horns, and it leads to a pretty sparse ending. But even though it's sparse, it's still pretty catchy and groovy, and I just love this track. Youlogy. It's not eulogy, it's eulogy. Afterwards, we have Endeavors for Never, which is a bit of an avant-garde jazz track. It feels a little aimless, but I still really like the sound effects all across the track. The watery sound effects, they're pretty nice. The next track, Recollections of the Wraith, is another pretty great track with some loud, boomy drums and a really faint but sensual R&B sample. The whole track is really moody. We also have the track King's New Clothes Are Made by His Own Hands. And yeah, it's also not one of the better tracks on the album. The beats, they feel drunken, a little sweet, but a little rigid, kind of chopped up and repetitive, a little redundant. The ending kind of fizzles out, not one of the better endings of the album. The next track, Yeah You, is noisy, buzzy, and condensed, but it's still a little bit dry. However, I do enjoy the analog synths towards the end. Anyway, the album ends off with Swerve, the reaping of all that is worthwhile, noir notwithstanding. And it is a great album ending, in my opinion. I really love the constant click, clacky, bleepy, bloopy, clear, clarity, crispy, crunchy beat. And the instrumentals here, they are tedious, but they're also really catchy. They sound like someone's trying to sing, but they get cut off every second or so, which is really unique. I really love the production of the album. Yeah, anyway, it's an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 for this album. Strong 8, definitely strong 8. Maybe to a light 9, strong 8, yeah. Favorite track? Youlogy, least favorite? Endeavors for Never. Third album, LaDispute, Wild Life. Michigan post-hardcore rock band, LaDispute, Wildlife. And this is a really solid album. Probably one of the most solid albums I've heard in recent months, because every single track sounds really similar, but they all give off such emotional disturbance, and the vocals, they're so passionate but yet so pained, and the guitar riffs, they're so dramatic and so yeah, it's a great hardcore rock album, I must say. The first 4 tracks, they all sound pretty similar, but each of them offers something a little different. Departure The album opener is a humble but a very downtrodden start to the album. The build up from slow and sad and depressing to angry and bitter and sort of and disturbed is just such a fantastic build up to the album. The second track gives a different tone to it, makes the track feel a little cooler, colder, more cold-blooded. The third track, St. Paul something Church, actually paints a really sad and corroded and rotten imagery with its very visualized lyrics. I really love that. The church, it's just faltering, it's broken up. Makes for an amazing album cover, to be honest. An amazing scene as well, like for a dystopian drama movie where the main character just wanders in outside of the church, of this broken, abandoned church. People used to praise their deities in this church, but now it's all empty. Ooh, and the track Edit Your Hometown has some fiery, dramatic riffs, which I really like. Anyway, A Letter is a rather sadder and slower and more toned down track, but yet the emotional potency is still there. Safer in the Forest / love song for Poor Michigan also has some really nice, busily building guitars. Together, they sort of build up to something worrisome, but also somewhat blissful at the very end. The next track, The Most Beautiful Bitter Fruit, isn't one of the better tracks on the album. The guitars are rather toned down, but again, still amazing performances, dramatic riffs, and they don't sound cheesy or corny at all. They really feel raw and organic. Same goes for the next track, maybe a little too raw. It's called A Poem. The guitars are super bare and faint. The screams are kind of dry. I kind of wish that there's more substance to them. But the track King Park, one of the longer tracks on the album, is one of the tracks on the album that leaves such an emotional impact to, I guess, anyone who had listened to the album. Because this track is about a drive-by shooting, and at the end, the shooter has a standoff with the police, and then at the very end, the main character, the singer, as the main character, asks, "If I kill myself, will I still go to heaven?" That line hits really hard, especially with such powerful but also expressive guitar riffs. It's so violent yet so emotional, and damn. We also have the track Edward Bends 27 Times, about a schizophrenic kid with a disturbing twist ending, which is a song that I really like as well. The track I See Everything is another really just emotional hardcore rock song with some loud, epic guitars, almost kind of reminiscent of Sunbather. And the song is about a cancer patient sort of watching himself die slowly. That's torturous. And Broken Jar has some low-key guitars, not one of the better tracks on the album. The second last track has some downtrodden and angular guitars that I really like. The vocals are a little quiet, but I still like it nonetheless, and the album ending is indeed epic and dramatic. It's called You and I in Unison, and the guitars are really in unison on this track, which builds into something really noisy and expressive and explosive, and yeah, the album is just full of emotions, and I love it. Favorite track, 8 out of 10, strong 8. Favorite track, King Park. Least favorite, A Poem, I guess. Fourth album, Battles, Gloss, Drop. Battles is a New York math rock band, and this is another one of those albums that I didn't really enjoy at first because it's not necessarily catchy or, I guess, accessible or poppy. It's very repetitive. It's very repetitive, very tedious. It sounds like every single track sounds like two different songs are being played at the same time. So it sounds really weird, but then again, it really grew on me. The track Afri Castle, right off the bat, so dramatic, so theatrical. At first, it's kind of spacey with these sweet, surreal bass guitars, and then the track just explodes with the blissful synth lines and the bombastic drums, and it's one hell of a stunning opener to the album. The second track, Ice Cream, is actually kind of poppy, but not necessarily catchy or anything. In fact, it feels kind of weird, especially in the intro where it's just ooh, ah, kind of like Billy Not Really, that Death Grip song. But yeah, this track really grew on me because of how fun and summery it is. The building arpeggios, organ synths are fantastic. The crispy drums is one of the major driving components of the song, and again, really grew on me. We have the song Futura with the click clack simple bass line at the beginning, which sounds really nice. The production on the album generally are really crispy clear, really adds a really nice sonic effect to the listener, I guess. And yeah, the crunchy drums on Futura is amazing. And then after the sweet, sugary, click-clacky bass riffs, we get some really dramatic and dense strings, which slaps on top of the very sweet and sugar-coated bass to give off another tone and atmosphere, which I really love. The track Inchworm is really one of my faves on the album. We get some jiggly bass keys at first, and then some goofy, clowny bass, and then some really nice skipping drums and some keyboards that sound like cutesy tootsy trains. And listening to the track sounds like I've just entered a really cutesy, toyish theme park directed by Wes Anderson, except 10 times more sugar-coated and toyish. And we have the track Wall Street, which is very wiggly and hyperactive and excited with the hyperspeed guitars, maybe a little repetitive, but I really like the bass line. But I do kind of like the bass line that sort of goes bam 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 bam. And we have the track My Machines, which is another track that required time to grow on you. But I really like how eerie and challenging the track sounds after the track had reached its end point. I just did my chemistry test earlier this morning, all the titration and volumetric analysis, so it's all in my head right now. But yeah, the vocals are really fun. The strings are stiff, but again, they add onto the eeriness of the track. We have the track Dominican Fade, and of course, it's going to have a nice little Caribbean vibe to it. It has some fun hand claps and some fun bass drums, but the track overall is just okay. The next track, Sweetie and Shag, also not one of the better tracks on the album. The vocals are a little bland, a little mundane. The keys are chirpy, but also really faint. The track Toddler is really short, really brief. It has some shy keys, but the melodies are pretty. Roll's bass is a head bobber. It's a banger. We get some wild, clunky, abrasive drums, but also at the same time cool, groovy, angular, calculated bass, and they just come together to make this awesome math rock track. White Electric is another messy track here. It's cacophonous, it's shimmery, but it's still a little messy. The ending of the album ends on a high note with the track Sundome with some crazy rah vocals and some really spacey guitars, eerie strings that are somewhat romantic. And yeah, just great ending, nice ending, cool ending. Yay to the album. Feeling an 8 out of 10 on the album as well. Favorite track here, probably Ice Cream. If it's not Ice Cream, then it's Inchworm. Least fave, Sweetie and Shag. And then I have, I want to talk about 2 shitty albums, but I have to go eat dinner first. So I'll be right back real quick. Okay, I'm back. I'm gonna quickly finish off the video. So I'm gonna talk about VivaBrother with famous first words. Apparently Pitchfork rated this the lowest score in the year 2011, and it's also one of the more lower rated albums in AOTY.org and Rate Your Music. So I checked it out, and it's not that terrible. But I understand why people think it's terrible, and I myself also think that it's kind of crappy. This album is a literal ripoff of Oasis. Yeah. What is Greta Van Fleet to Led Zeppelin is what is VivaBrother to Oasis. They really tried their best to impersonate every single aspect of Oasis into their music, and very cheaply so, with the raw but also sweet guitar chords, and of course the vocals. They sound very, very similar to that of Liam Gallagher's. But yeah, that being said, even though this is a very bland and mundane and unoriginal rock album, the first 3 tracks or so aren't really that bad, because I mean, of course, because it's the first 3 tracks, but as you listen to the album further, you realize that every single song sounds pretty similar, and then it starts to get bad and boring and drab and blab and dry. We have tracks like High Street Low Lives, where the vocals, they try so hard to sound like Liam Gallagher's vocals, they don't even sound realistic. And then we have the track Electric Daydream, where the vocals just suck so much. When the chorus comes on, the vocalist of the band just reaches such an awkward falsetto tone, like it's honestly laughable. We have tracks like Darling Buds of May, essentially a song about a person, or more like people who also have birthdays in May, are buddies of the vocalist, because the vocalist's birthday is also in May. So if your birthday is in May, you're buddies. Now that is stupidity. And the hook is just, yeah. We have tracks like Fly By Nights and False Alarms and Time Machine, essentially the last 3 tracks of the album, and they sound like sugar-coated trash. They're disgustingly sugar-coated. So yeah, while it's not a terrible, terrible, terrible rock album, it's also not good. Not at all. It's very much bland, boring, unoriginal, and the vocals. 3 out of 10, favorite track. I don't know. Least favorite? Probably Electric Daydream. Alright, at last I'm going to talk about the Planningtorock album W. Yes, look at the freaking album cover. So Planningtorock is Janine Rostron from UK, art pop singer-songwriter, and this is an album called W. And more like L. More like Planningtorock L. And also, why this name? Even the name is boring. Planningtorock? When are you gonna actually rock? Come back when you actually rock. Planningtorock? Like you're planning, but you're not actually doing it. Yeah, anyway, this album is atrocious. Every time I listen to it, it just gets worse, and I listened to it like 3 times. It's wow. You know, there are albums out there where it tries to be, you know, experimental and artsy, and it just totally fails at its face, falls at its face, and fails, and becomes just gross, messed up garbage, like that John Frusciante album I discussed a month earlier. Except, at least that album isn't as ridiculously gross as this album. This album is gross. It sounds like Stinky Breath. Morning Breath. This album sounds like morning breath. If you can hear Stinky Breath, it's going to sound like this album. Yeah, so essentially this album is full of I don't even know what kind of music this is, but let's just say that it is electro pop-ish, a little experimental. The beats and the instrumentals, the horns, the guitars, the keyboards, they sound kinda rough, and they are constantly squawking and scrubbing on every single track. And the vocals, they are laughably terrible. On tracks like Doorway, the vocals are like very demonic and in a very cringy way. On tracks like The One and I'm Your Man, the vocals are distorted and compressed to a point where it sounds like wow, 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 wow. On tracks like Manifesto and the album ending number 9, it sounds like Janine doesn't have a nasal passageway. He just sings like on the track Going Wrong. The vocals are a majority of the track is basically Janine going eee. It's unbearable. We have the track Jam, where it is a jam, except it makes no sense. Nothing on the track makes sense at all. The vocals fly out left and right. The instrumentals are all splattered together, and not even in a Dadaist way, not even in a Captain Beefheart Jackson Pollock way, not even intentionally messy. It's just grossly messy. We have tracks like Black Thunder, which is just very bland and boring in comparison. Like, if you want to fuck up the entire track list, might as well fuck up this one. But no, this one is one clean palette for no reason. Nothing happens on this track. We have the track Milky Blau, and it's this goofy orchestral mess that's kind of herky-jerky and in an awkward way. The only track that I can tolerate relatively is the track Living It Out, where it actually has a bit of a danceable beat, and that's it. The vocals are still god awful, and yeah, it's really this album. Again, I'll say this again. It's the funniest thing I've said all day. If you can hear Bad Breath, it's going to sound like this album. Look at it! Look at this album! Look at the album cover! Yeah. 1 to a 2 out of 10. Have you listened to these albums from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like if you like it, hate if you hate it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. Jesus is King, coming like a couple days later.